Hi, I'm Marie. And?
I'm Russell.
And we're still standing with Ukraine.
Ready?
All right, I'll give you a countdown. And we're going to start with Marie, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Marie.
And I'm Russell.
And we're still standing with Ukraine. And today, we're going to be talking a lot about what has happened in the past year, kind of like a recap.
In 1994, the Budapest Memorandum was signed between Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and I think also France and England, because they were nuclear powers. And basically, for our purposes, the important point of that is that Ukraine had inherited a bunch of nuclear missiles from the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union dissolved in the early 1990s, the Soviet Union had a lot of nuclear missiles stationed in Ukraine. So Ukraine had possession of those things as an independent country now in 1994. So they signed an agreement, mainly with Russia and the United States, agreeing to turn all those nuclear missiles back to to Russia, in return for Russia and the United States promising security agreements to Ukraine and promising to protect Ukraine. Which sounds...
Both Russia and the U.S. were agreeing to protect Ukraine at that time?
That sounds kind of strange, doesn't it?
It does.
Because 10 years later, Russia attacked Ukraine. Not only did not protect Ukraine, attacked Ukraine.
10 years
20
later?
years later. 20 years later, in 2014.
Yeah.
When they launched an invasion of Crimea, basically, to take over Crimea.
Yeah, they kind of called them the little green men that came in, all by surprise. That was in 2014?
Right, yeah.
And that one didn't last too long, right? The invasion, they took over Crimea. Was that part of the agreement in 2014?
Well, the invasion didn't take very long because Ukraine was kind of taken by surprise and didn't expect the country that had promised to protect them to actually be attacking them.
Right.
And Russia managed to take all of Crimea and part of an area. We have our map up again today. That's when Russia took Crimea from Ukraine and also helped what they called Russian separatists, people who were of Russian recent ancestry living in this area of Ukraine, wanted to separate from Ukraine, and Russia also sent troops in to help those places, which in this area is basically called the Donbass. You hear the word the Donbass a lot, and that includes all of this part of Ukraine over here.
And is this part of Donbass also a little farther away from?
Well, I've got code on here. The D. Well, first of all, this border here is the official border, the 1991 internationally agreed border between Ukraine and Russia. This dotted line now represents the area where Russia occupies today, occupying this part of Ukraine.
Right.
The D is Donetsk, the Z is Zaporizhia, the K is Kherson, and Kharkiv up here.
But Ukraine took this back at the beginning of this most recent invasion back in 2022?
Yeah, the most recent invasion in February of 2022, Russia poured in from this part of Russia, from Belarus, from this part of Russia, and from the Black Sea. So they basically attacked Ukraine from 3 sides.
They thought it was going to take 3 days, right?
Yeah, this was the, what do they call it, special military operation, special 3-day military operation of Russia to basically conquer the rest of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And they did end up taking a lot of this area in this part of the country, and Kharkiv, in the Kherson area down here. But Ukraine has since then pushed Russia back out to this line here.
Okay. But besides the Budapest Memorandum and then that Minsk Agreement in 2014, which I don't know if we finished talking about, in 2014 when they took the well, helped the people in the Donbass and took over Crimea. Was that part of the Minsk agreement?
The Minsk agreement in 2014 was supposedly to end the hostilities, as you might say, in this area.
I've heard stories that it didn't do that.
Well, President Zelensky, I've seen him give various interviews where he claims that he can name 22 different peace agreements between Ukraine and Russia over the last several decades. And every single one has been broken by Russia, as the Budapest Agreement and the Minsk Agreement were broken. So when people now want to talk about, let's have a peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia, anybody with a memory, and especially the Ukrainians, are kind of wary of signing a peace deal with Russia.
Understandably. So, so there's been a lot of peace talk in the past year. I know that Ukrainians are feeling very desperate for peace, but like you just finished mentioning, they're wary because every other peace agreement has been broken.
Well, Donald Trump famously announced before the election where he took power this last time that he would solve and settle the Ukraine-Russian war in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So he officially had the power to try to do those things almost a year ago now, and they're no closer to peace in Ukraine now than they were before he took office.
So how many times has Ukraine called, or well, how many times did the U.S. call for a ceasefire?
Going back about, we're recording this in Tuesday, January 20th, right? 2026.
Yeah.
So starting about a year ago, when Donald Trump came to office the last time, from then, in the last year, the United States has called for a ceasefire between the two parties at least 6 different times. And every single time, the Ukrainians have agreed to it, mm-hmm. and none of those 6 times did Russia agree to it.
Not a one?
Not one.
Hmm. So who's involved in this peacekeeping mission besides Trump, who wants or wanted peace?
Well, this whole business is kind of strange. I can understand why people don't understand what's going on here, but the United States has held several meetings with Zelensky and other Russian representatives. The United States and Ukraine have talked, and the United States and Russia have talked, but the two warring parties, Ukraine and Russia, have never spoken since early on in 2022, right after the initial invasion.
Yeah.
And the United States peace delegation, I guess you might call them, in most of these discussions between the United States and Zelensky, or the United States and Russia, have involved Donald Trump, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, if you've heard that name, Marco Rubio, the United States Secretary of State now, and this guy, Steve Witkoff, with Russia never present in the discussions between the United States and Ukraine.
And so
We should
do Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner have like a background in negotiations of peace?
Funny you should ask. Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner, until a year ago now, were billionaire real estate developers. That was their stated profession and career of each of those two people. So Jared Kushner not only is a billionaire real estate developer, but also Donald Trump's son-in-law. Steve Witkoff was a billionaire real estate developer and a golfing buddy of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for some strange reason, appointed those two people to be the lead negotiators on most of these peace talks with Russia.
Do you think they're talking about peace?
There's some doubt as to what. Well, there's some doubt that they're talking about peace. There doesn't seem much doubt about what they're really talking about. Steve Witkoff, real estate billionaire from the United States. Donald Trump, billionaire real estate developer from the United States. And Jared Kushner, the same, discussing with I got to read his name here because I forget how to say this. The Russian, where's his name? I can't see.
Dmitry or?
Dmitriev has been the lead negotiator for the Russians, and he just happens to be one of Putin's oligarch supporters, billionaires in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So the only person in any of these peace talks that really seems to be serious about it might be Marco Rubio, who is our Secretary of State. And he's
Right.
been involved in some of these talks, but not all of them.
The more recent ones, I don't think he's been in, right?
No, and Witkoff seems to be the favorite for the United States to discuss things with, especially with Russia. Steve Witkoff has been to Moscow several times, 6 or 7 times in the last year, to talk with the Russians, this Dmitriev and Putin. And Witkoff has never been to Ukraine.
Yeah, it's very strange.
I fail to see how a person who is trying to negotiate a peace between Ukraine and Russia and claims to know something about this and be able to do it and maybe an expert on the subject has never been to the country of Ukraine. He's never seen the bombed out hospitals. He's never seen the thousands and thousands of wounded Ukrainian veterans, the bombed out schools, the hundreds of newly created cemeteries in Ukraine to hold the Ukrainian civilians and citizens that
Right.
have been killed. But he doesn't hesitate to go to Moscow and have tea with Putin and Dmitriev.
Yeah. So there's also, I guess there was also some other people involved. And
Well,
in November was I wouldn't say the biggest, right? But in November is when they got together on
the
Russia came up with a plan in November, right?
That's the rumor.
Is that the one that Dmitriev came up with,
That's the official rumor out of the White House that Donald Trump came up with a peace plan, which he presented to the world in November. But this was presented by Donald Trump shortly after one of Witkoff's discussions with the Russian oligarch Dmitriev. And the way that proposal was written sounds to experts in the Russian language that it was originally crafted in Russian language and automatically translated to English. So Witkoff and Trump probably had very little to do with writing that peace plan. And that so-called peace plan, I like to call it a so-called peace plan, because it's nothing more than a presentation of Russia's demands.
kind of like a capitulation, so
A
to speak?
surrender, a Ukrainian surrender document is what it is, basically.
And giving just about everything, including land that they didn't take?
Well, the so-called peace plan presented in last November still has all of Russia's demands from the spring of 2022, when he first started laying conditions for what he might consider to have peace. And these things, I have to look at the list here because there's a lot of things.
Okay, it's on.
Ukraine. So these are points in the Donald Trump peace plan presented to the world in November of 2025.
Right down here.
Right. Ukraine would be required to cut the size of the military going forward. Mm-hmm. Ukraine would never be allowed to join NATO, which they have aspired to for several years now. Russia would be able to keep all of the territory that they've captured. So all of this part of Ukraine to the dotted line and Crimea, Russia would keep that. Plus, as a bonus to Vladimir Putin,
A bonus.
these points that are labeled here, this is the city of Zaporizhia, and this is Kherson. This is in Zaporizhia Oblast, which is over in here. And Kherson is in what's called the Kherson Oblast, which extends way over to here. In this so-called peace agreement, not only would Russia keep all the land they now have their tanks parked on, they would also keep the entirety of the Zaporizhia area and the entirety of the Kherson, places they don't even occupy anymore.
And these are very large cities, and
Yeah.
all that they've been taking along here are very tiny towns
Right.
and fields.
Most of this area that they have conquered is sunflower fields, farm fields. But these Zaporizhia and Kherson, both cities of about 500,000 or more for each of them. And Ukrainians obviously still live in those cities, so those people would instantaneously become in the controlled area of Russia all of a sudden, if that's turned over to Russia.
Right.
But there's more. It's better.
There's more. Oh boy.
The peace plan, as it's called, all sanctions against Russia would be lifted, so they would be welcomed back into the international community as a normal, peace-loving country.
Peace-loving.
And the Russian assets that you hear a lot about, $300 billion of Russian money is frozen for Russia, foreign banks, like in Denmark and the United States and so on. All that money will be returned with a, I'm sorry, thank you, here's your money back to Russia.
How about war crimes?
War crimes are not even mentioned
Not mentioned, huh?
in the so-called peace settlement. And the United Nations and other organizations have documented upwards of 170,000, and you heard that right, 170,000 war crimes by Russia in Ukraine since 2022. Those all just go away under this peace plan.
Oh my.
Thousands
That's a
and
great
thousands,
peace plan.
thousands of Ukrainian children that have been kidnapped,
Right.
physically kidnapped and taken out of these areas and shipped off to adoptive parents all throughout Russia. No mention of them in this so-called peace plan.
Wow.
So I think the official name of this document now should be the official 2025 so-called peace plan.
So have you heard anything lately about the peace plan with everything else that's going on?
Not really. It's sort of fallen off of people's, the front of their mind into the back of their heads, I guess, now.
I do remember Zelensky, but not only Zelensky, the Pope was asking Russia to not bomb on Christmas.
Which they went ahead and did anyhow.
Yeah.
It's a favorite trick of Vladimir Putin's that after every discussion between the United States and Ukraine to come to some kind of settlement, Russia ups its bombing of civilian targets in Kiev, Kharkiv, and other places, even Lviv, way the heck over here. Every square inch. Ukraine is a little bigger than the state of Texas. Russia has missiles stationed all along here, down here, in the Black Sea, and all along here. Every square inch of Ukraine can be reached by Russian missiles, and has been reached by Russian missiles.
I've seen some maps where the missiles fly in all kinds of directions so that some of them are just fake ones and some of them are real ones, so they don't know which one's going to actually hit where.
Yeah, the Russians, you can see maps online, printed online, that show the nightly flight paths of the cruise missiles and ballistic missiles and things shot from Russia into Ukraine. And they come from, well, like I said, they come from all these different places and don't go straight to their target, but they can program these things now to fly serpentine paths so the Ukrainians don't know where the missiles are headed. And it's hard to defend against them.
And some have gone like this all the way into Poland and around.
Right.
So going into NATO country.
We didn't have any use the word Shahid drone yet, but another thing that the Russians use are these slower moving unmanned drones called Shahid drones, and several of them have gone into Polish airspace, and some have even crashed over there, and one or two have crashed down here in Moldova, which could be easily taken as acts of war by the countries of Poland or Moldova or NATO in general. But
And I think they're trying to not to focus on that and let it pass, huh?
right.
So that-
well, let me before we move
more
on to this
stuff?
national security thing. To sum up how you might look at these so-called peace negotiations of the past year, 3 American billionaires, Trump, Kushner, and Witkoff, have been discussing with Russian billionaires, that name again, Kirill Dmitriev and Putin. Ukrainians have been told if an agreement is reached between the United States and Russia, that they just have to accept it and agree to whatever Russia states as their conditions. And these two main negotiators for the United States, Kushner and there's so many names. Kushner and Witkoff have never even been to the country of Ukraine, and they're negotiating on behalf of the Ukrainians. It's insane. It's ludicrous.
It's very ludicrous, yeah.
We could sum it up by saying Russia profits, the United States profits, and a diminished and weakened Ukraine survives. Is all they can hope for.
Oh my. So, but it's been put off to the side, and they're still fighting. And there's also the aspect that you have to deal. They're speaking for the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians have a parliament. They don't just have a president that says it's going to be this way. The president has only a certain amount of power, and then the rest of the country has to agree to the taking over of all this peace plan as well.
Right.
They can't just give that up without the people saying it's okay.
Ukraine has been in a real tough situation for years now, since 2022. They have no respect whatsoever from Donald Trump or his administration now. And Vladimir Putin even refuses to accept the fact that Ukraine is an independent country. He considers Ukraine as part of Russia that's temporarily been broken away.
Yeah.
So Zelensky's got a tough road to hoe here.
Well, I think we mentioned before on a previous show, a YouTuber called Jake Bro does a lot of talking about Ukraine. And
There's a lot of information out there if people
yeah,
want to research this a little bit. It's too bad that the Ukrainian, well, we hear different things, the Ukrainian war, the Russo-Ukrainian war, the Russian war. I think I've decided that this should be called Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine. Russia's war on Ukraine. That's exactly what this is Russia's war on Ukraine.
and I think they're trying to see how much they can get away with. They thought it was going to happen in 3 days and not, but this Jake Bro has talked numerous times on how if they take Ukraine, they will keep going into other countries that they believe still belong to them as well.
Several different spokespeople of Russia, I think even including Putin. Putin, former President Medvedev, and people on Russian state TV have said that their ultimate goal here is to reconstitute the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So that means they want Ukraine,
Crazy.
they want Belarus officially, they want the Baltic states of Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia.
Yeah, they want it all.
They want it all. Moldova.
I think they even mentioned on state TV that they wanted Alaska back.
Yeah, that didn't get much attention. You would think that would get people's attention in the United States.
And was it just last year, because time flies, that they did roll out the red carpet for Putin in Alaska?
Yeah, these are fun pictures you can look up online. A huge plane with Rossiya written across the front of it, Russia in Russian, parked on the tarmac at some U.S. air base in Alaska with American airmen on their hands and knees, physically on their hands and knees, rolling out a red carpet to welcome Vladimir Putin, war criminal, to the United States territory, which he has said he wants to get back from the United States.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't make this stuff up.
And then lastly, I want to talk about, well, not the last thing, but of this whole peace thing. Every year there's a national security strategy of the United States of America that's written up. And did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, that fits in perfectly with what we've been talking about so far here. It's not on a definite schedule, but every year or two, the United States presidential administration puts out this thing they call the National Security Strategy of the United States of America. National Security Strategy of the United States. Trump and his flunkies just put one out in December. It's only a 33-page report, but there's a lot of things in there. 33-page report of the United States' national security strategy. It doesn't mention Russia once as an adversary or
That's
as a threat.
interesting.
Yeah, it does mention Russia 10 or 12 times as an ally and a potential trading partner,
Oh, wow.
which makes you go like this.
Huh? My father sure would have said something about, what?
Well, this document has just kind of flown under the radar. I mean, it's not something Trump wanted to publicize widely, evidently, and a lot of other people, aren't even aware that it was put
Well,
out, I don't think.
I think it was put out recently, and there's been so many other things that we're not going to get into that were happening. So this was kind of like spoken about for like a day or two, and nobody really noticed it, I don't think.
I don't want to sound like a conspiracy person, but when you mention a lot of other things that have been happening, a lot of people say that is, I'm not going to list all those things, you know what we're talking about. The guy whose name begins with Jeffrey, and his last name begins with Epstein. A lot of things have been happening lately to take our attention away from that and away from things like this national security strategy.
Yeah,
Things are getting crazy.
it seems like a lot of chaos.
But another important thing that this strategy report, it openly criticizes Europe as being
Oh, yeah.
having unrealistic expectations for the outcome of the for the Russian war in Ukraine.
Ah,
And those unrealistic expectations are evidently that Europe expects Russia to be defeated. This report accuses European countries of stifling free speech and being undemocratic.
wow.
Never once does it mention Red China as being undemocratic, North Korea as being undemocratic,
That's
Russia as
interesting.
being undemocratic.
Oh, my.
And it mentions that the United States' goal is to, very soon now, withdraw from NATO leadership and eventually withdraw from NATO completely.
Well, I think Trump has been wanting that for a long time. At least he's been threatening it. I don't know if it's something that will actually happen, but I know he's spoken of it a lot. Well, I kind of want to get away from all that depressing stuff. I consider it depressing anyways. And let people know that we don't just do this. We spend a lot of our time creating, making, and turning my art, and Russell's art and crafts, and other people's art and crafts into humanitarian aid for Ukraine. And we're going to be at Kimball Jenkins on the 7th of February, as well as on the 7th of March, along with the Concord Arts Market. And you can always find me at or things that I have to offer at the DIY Craft and Thrift in downtown Concord. And I want to thank Concord TV for helping us produce this show. And also, if you're not watching on Concord TV, but on our YouTube channel, the Still Standing with Ukraine, I want to thank you for that as well, and hit the like and subscribe button so you can know when we'll have another show. And we have some coming up with some other humanitarian aid organizations, and you'll want to be catching those. We'll have a couple in February, and then hopefully in March. And keep tabs with us here, and also online at Still Standing with Ukraine. And glory to the Ukraine, or
Slava Ukraina, glory to Ukraine. And
right, and glory to the heroes.
Herom Slava.
Heroes Slava.
Until next time.